Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on a couple worm bins here that are now receiving their 8th feeding today on their 82nd day in service. It's only been 10 days since we last checked in on these little guys, but sort of similar to what my explanation was for only coming back after 9 days for the feeding that I fed yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday? Actually, I think the system I fed yesterday had been 10 days, but the reason for the fairly short period of time, because normally I'll go 12, 14 days between feedings, it's only because I've got a fairly good surplus of stuff. Compliments on my mom, and check this out. This is pretty much like the half of a cantaloupe, and it came out of my mom's freezer just a short while ago. I just got home from her house, and it was taking up some space in her freezer, and she was really looking to get it out of her refrigerator, make some space. And I knew that I had this pair of bins here on the schedule for being fed today, and from what I remembered, their last feeding was not all that big, so it did seem to me like after 10 days it would be realistic to come back in here and find that they might be ready for more food. Well, I mean, sometimes we'll come back into a system after a short period of time and find some leftovers, but that's fine. I'm okay with giving them a little bit more, even if there are leftovers remaining. So, I often prepare for my worm bin check-ins by reviewing the previous check-ins video, and I probably did skim through the video of our last feeding of these two systems 10 days ago yesterday, but I don't think I looked at it today, so I'm not even really quite sure what it was that they received last time. Perhaps we'll be reminded of what it was as we plow through the feeding area. It seems like lately I've been a little bit delinquent on providing my systems with feeding zone indicators. I did have a couple days worth of coffee sitting up in the kitchen that are sitting in their coffee filters, and they're all set to go, but with all that cantaloupe that has to be fed to these systems here, it just seemed like including coffee too would be overkill, so I decided I would just stick to the cantaloupe today and hang on to that coffee for another feeding another time. It almost does look to me like possibly the last feeding might have been cantaloupe as well. There's just something very distinct about the appearance of cantaloupe rind. So I did feel like we needed to make a fairly good size hole to fit all this cantaloupe into today, because it's a pretty generous portion, and it's definitely the kind of thing that the worms are going to just go mad about, because it's just really sweet and easy to eat and chock full of moisture. So I do suspect that if we were to come back in here another 10 days from now, chances are we would probably find very little, if any, leftovers of today's feeding. Of course, the rinds of the cantaloupe typically do survive and take a little bit longer to get broken down, but all the juicy, yummy cantaloupe does remain. And usually it is just the cantaloupe rinds that I'm feeding to the worms, because the cantaloupe itself is typically eaten by humans, leaving only the rinds for the wormies to eat. But in this case, the cantaloupe that they're receiving today was sampled by my mom. It didn't really taste right to her, so she didn't want to eat it. She just figured, you know what, donate it to the worm farm, and chances are the worms are gonna really enjoy it, even if it wasn't really all that enjoyable from a human perspective. So we've definitely created a couple good size holes into which I believe we can fit today's feeding. Luckily, I've prepared a nice fresh batch of bedding that we can drop into the feeding zones, onto which the food can be placed, and man, that's a pretty generous amount there. So since one system received a generous amount, it's only fair to give the other one an equally generous amount. So I think we'll just be in a generous mood today. As for how we're going to fit all this cantaloupe in here, that's another story. I'll see how we can divvy this stuff up in as fair a way as possible so that each system receives a fair shake at the portion. It does seem to me like if I carefully spread it all out in here, we'll somehow manage to give it all to the wormies. Yeah, there is definitely a good bit of food going in here today, that's for sure. And as for whether or not it's a fair distribution, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just wondering if perhaps if I put that piece over there, is it more fair? Or was it already fair? Now that it's in here, it doesn't even look like all that much. At first I thought it was just going to be way too much. But you know, I bet you the worms are checking it out already and thinking, no, not too much. Feel free to give us more if you like. We're happy to help. So, you know, before we cover this thing up, why don't we also continue on with this whole idea of being generous with the bedding. It does seem to me like this system's got such a nice texture, like all the material in it, even though it's fairly damp, it all feels like it all crumbles and flows and moves so nicely. And I do feel like it might have something to do with the fact that we've been pretty generous with the bedding. I think even last time we spread the top surface of bedding that was laid out all over this thing and blended it in. So let's not forget about the leftovers, even though there aren't many. And I think we can begin backfilling. And you know, I'm going to backfill in such a way here that that we're going to see if we can try to preserve all that leafy matter that we pushed off to the edges, you know, because I like the way that stuff looked sprinkled out across the top, and I'd like to try to restore it sort of the way we found it. I know it's not as much as there was when we first got in here, but it did seem like there was a good bit of it remaining that could probably just be spread out and kept for another interval between feedings. I didn't bring any fresh leaves in from inside lately, so right now I just don't have enough with which to lay down a fresh top coating, so I figured we would try to see about preserving it and reusing it. And this is just going to be one of those times when we don't disturb the outer edges. I think we'll just kind of reach over here to bring back some of this leafy matter, to spread it out across the top, and that will make everything look kind of nice and natural. There's something about having leafy matter spread out across the top surface of your worm bins. It just makes the whole thing look so nice and I don't know, somehow it makes it look more natural. Perhaps it's just me. But I like the way it looks. So, no feeding zone indicators today, even though I do have a little collection of coffee filters right here within reach on the table. I suppose if we really wanted to, we could always grab a couple and lay them down, should we? I've been a little, as I mentioned earlier, delinquent with, and stingy if you want to call me that too, with dishing out the feeding zone indicators, you know, so I don't want to gain a reputation of being stingy. Let's just give them feeding zone indicators. Alrighty. And then back on can come our top coverings. Top coverings have all kinds of castings adhering to them, as well as some leafy matter. And I'll always try to make sure I don't have that that opening of the bag facing down in such a way that worms could accidentally find themselves inside the bag and trapped. So that's part of the reason I always kind of take care to try to figure out where the opening of the bag is and aim it away from where the worms could possibly be coming up. So, oh boy, what do we see here? Flying insects, you know? Maybe I should have come in here with my BTI spray. I could always do that as homework, you know? So I've got my spray bottle, but it doesn't have any fluid in it. There's a little bit, but probably not enough. I'll refill this, take the plastic off, give these systems a little treatment of this stuff, and then I'll feel better about it. So, that's it for the check-in, everyone. I got a little bit of cleaning up and homework and other things to do here, but I'm not going to keep around for that. That's boring. before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.